slept so well. Thank you for your hospitality. A blessing upon your home. It felt so good to be indoors after so many days and nights out on the road. And it surprised me when you took me in, especially after I told you that I am a disciple of Jesus. It seems these days that closes more doors than it opens. But I am a disciple of Jesus. I'm not one of the famous apostles, but I was with Jesus from the beginning and up through the end. I'm very good friends with Thomas. He's one of the apostles. He's the one the others refer to as Doubting Thomas, which is actually one of the nicer things they call him. Yeah, we disciples, we don't always get along. Lots of bickering. Although a lot of people treat us like outsiders, even within our own group, some of us get treated as outsiders. So Thomas has since gone to India. Oh, he's always been fascinated with India, ever since he first learned of the Hijras. These are the eunuchs of India. Not male, not female, but something in the middle or altogether different. They're very highly regarded and respected in India. So Thomas has gone to share good news and to hear some too. So I have some things for Thomas and some writing. Of all the disciples, I'm one of the few who can actually read and write, which surprised the others. But you see, when I was a little girl, when I was little, my father, he taught me my letters. So after everything happened, Thomas and me, we talked and decided that we need to write down everything that the teacher said. And it's a good thing too, because it seems these days everyone is writing their own gospels, and I'm afraid that the story has begun to change. Jesus said many amazing and wonderful things. Jesus said, "Recognize what is right before your eyes, and mysteries will be revealed to you. For there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed." And during those years together, I saw all kinds of mysteries all around us, and in the scriptures too. It's funny because I never liked the scriptures much growing up. They always seemed boring. But during those late night conversations, they came alive. And I saw people I had never seen before, men and women, and some not male, not female, something in the middle or altogether different. Like Deborah. Deborah, wow. There was hardly anyone like her before or since. Deborah was a poet, a prophet, a judge, and a warrior. Yeah, not your typical Jewish mother.
I am Deborah. They say I seemed different from the girls growing up, but I remained ignorant to the ways of boys and men until, of course, I married one, Lepidoth, my husband. Then I set about to discover the difference between these men and me. I quickly determined I am as strong as they, smarter than many, wiser than most. I looked further into the matter to unearth the difference between these men and me, and I discovered these men have one thing that I do not. One little thing. I reasoned, surely I have resources. I could fashion for myself my own little thing. But, being greedy, I thought, why not have one big thing? And I love how it feels, long and hard, pressing up against my thigh. This sword, which of course is the next best thing. And with this sword I have become Deborah. They come here to the palm of Deborah. I judge matters between them, small and great. But I also listen. I listen to the rumblings of our enemies, for there are many on all sides that trouble us. And I listen for direction. You see, I serve as father and mother over the people. After a season of listening, I summoned to my side my trusted General Barak. Barak, I said, our enemy Sisera raises up an army against us. You are to raise your own army. Though outnumbered, fear not, you will have the victory. My general, wise, courageous, turned to me and said, "Nay, Deborah, we will not fight unless you agree to come alongside with us." Agreed, General. I will join you and your men. You will have victory, but know that since you ask this of me, the glory will go to a woman. We prepared for battle. I put on my breastplate, my helmet, my sword. I entered the battlefield looking like all the other warriors, and we routed our enemy. They fled before us like frightened sheep. And then I saw him in the distance. Coward, our enemy, Sisera, as he leapt from his chariot, escaping our grasp. And this Sisera ran and ran until he came to the tent of Yael. Yael, that beautiful hostess. Her honey cakes are the finest in all the land. Yael, a woman on the borderlands of mixed allegiances. Yael, my friend. She beckoned our enemy into her tent, gave him food to eat, milk to drink, a place to lie down. He begged her for a blanket under which he can conceal himself, and there he fell into a dead sleep. Yael, that beautiful hostess, graceful as a willow, mighty as a cedar of Lebanon. She, too, like me, had her own little thing. A sharpened tent peg. And with that tent peg, she quietly stole up next to our sleeping enemy, not forgetting all the ways he had troubled our women. And she placed the point of the peg at his temple and bashed it through his skull. So that when my general came by with his troops, she beckoned them into her tents, and there he saw our enemy slain. He came and reported all to me. Yes, General, it is exactly as I had foretold. And did I not also tell you that the glory would go to a woman? This woman, Yael. Oh, you thought that I spoke of myself? No. I left off being a woman long ago, ever since I became myself. I am Deborah.
Deborah found a place. And many people do, although they seem so different. I mean, I think of the eunuchs, not just the hijras, but eunuchs in all places. Now, some people, they're born eunuch, in that it's not possible to tell by looking at an infant if you're holding a boy or a girl baby. Many others are forced to be eunuchs against their will, while still others choose to be eunuchs. They become great and serve in houses and palaces and temples. Jesus said, "When you make the two into one, and make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and male into female, and female into male, so that there is no longer male nor female, then you'll enter the kingdom." And when I think of eunuchs, I remember Queen Esther, our greatest queen. And when I think of Esther, I remember that sometimes the most important people are the most invisible. Oh, you come at the perfect time. No, it's been absolutely crazy here in the court of Xerxes. Xerxes, the king. That's his Persian name. You probably call him something different. Most people do. No, it's been crazy. And of course it was up to the eunuchs to fix everything, because that's what we do. Yes, I am a eunuch here in King Xerxes' court. Ironically, they call me Hegai. It's my Persian name. The trouble started about 7 years ago. Xerxes got it into his head that he wanted to have this blowout party and invite everyone who is anyone from his entire kingdom, which extends from India to Ethiopia. Size queen that he is. Of course, it was up to the eunuchs to make the magic happen. They put me in charge of the decorations. Oh, the banners, the tapestries, the hanging gardens. They're going to be talking about this party for a long time. The celebration lasted for a full 6 months, because here in Persia, when we party, we don't play. It was a huge success, so much so that once we packed everyone up and cleaned the place, Xerxes decided to have a second celebration to honor all of the officials of the court, from the lowest to the highest, and I am one of the highest. This celebration lasted for 7 days. On the 7th and final day of the celebration, Xerxes was with his drinking buddies, drunk off his royal throne, when he summoned me to his side. Almighty, exalted, and really inebriated Xerxes, how may I serve my king? He wanted me to go into the harem to fetch Vashti, the queen. She's gorgeous. He wanted to parade her in front of some of his male guests. Well, I tried to explain to him that Vashti's not into that whole thing, but you cannot talk sense to the king. So being a eunuch, as I am, I have pretty much unfettered access into every part of the palace, including the women's quarters. I guess they figure that since I'm technically weaponless, that somehow I'm not interested. And we'll let them continue to think that now, won't we? So I went straight into the queen's quarters, right up to the queen, said, "Oh, Vashti, huge problem with the king." "What's that?" "Yes, he's been drinking again." "I know. We need to do that whole intervention thing you've been talking about. But here's the deal. You are gorgeous. The king would like you to do a little walkthrough. In, out, 5 minutes. You don't have to say a word." She would have none of it. She said, "I am no plaything to be dangled in front of these men. I've got a heart. I've got a mind. I've got ideas for this kingdom." I completely agreed with her. I just didn't think it was the best political move to make. So I asked her, "Vashti, sweetheart, is that your final answer?" That's what I thought. So being the eunuch, I had to be the bearer of bad news, which can prove fatal. Almighty, exalted, and really kind and compassionate Xerxes. We got a little problem with the queen. She's temporarily indisposed, and he exploded. Rageaholic that he is, crying for her head. It took us 3 days to calm him down. Sadly, Vashti was stripped of her crown, banished from the palace. So for the next few days, I was completely consumed with her, packing her things, finding her a place to stay. But don't worry about Vashti. She'll be fine. She's a very resourceful woman. In fact, I've encouraged her to write a book about her experiences here in the palace. Well, as I was busy with the queen, I began to get troubling reports about the king, how he's lonely, he's confused, he's depressed. Without his queen, he doesn't know who he is. Please. So I got together with some of the other eunuchs. We came up with this amazing idea that we pitched to the king. Almighty, exalted, and really sad and downtrodden looking Xerxes, we, your royal eunuchs, would love to scour your entire incredibly large kingdom in search of beautiful young women. These we will put through the paces, and when we have some finalists, we will present them to you. And you, King Xerxes, will decide who will be Persia's next top queen. He loved it. He's all about the spectacle. And that's what we did. We went to every backwater place in this kingdom, and I nearly despaired. I mean, I saw beautiful women, don't get me wrong, but to be a queen, yeah, that takes somebody special. But then I saw her. Beautiful, bright-eyed, flawless complexion, young girl with the name of Hadassah, no more than 15 or 16 years old. I said, "Young lady, if you like, there might be a place in the palace for you." She said yes. I brought her here, changed her name to Esther. It's more Persian sounding. Handpicked her handmaidens because you've got to be careful. And I put her on my own personal beauty and diet regime. I prepared her for the big reveal. Now, being a eunuch, as I am, the men of the court, well, they don't treat me like one of the boys. No, they often come to me looking for advice or a shoulder to cry on, or they tell me their secrets, their sexual secrets. I could just be sitting in the garden minding my own business when some judge or general or governor comes by and says, "Hey, Hegai, you know what we'd love to try?" To which I always respond, "I'm good, thanks." But these guys, they always tell me, and let me tell you, some of these guys, freaks. But sometimes this can come in handy. One night, King Xerxes himself invited me to spend the evening with him in his private bedroom chambers. Well, not for anything like that. The king doesn't do eunuchs, although I've heard rumors. No, we just chatted and knocked back a couple of flasks of wine, and somewhere in the middle of the night, Xerxes leans in and says, "Hey, Hegai, you know what I would love? I would love if some woman just burst in here and blah, 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 blah." He told me his deepest, darkest, freakiest sexual fantasy, and I thought, I'm going to file this one away. This one can come in handy someday. And sure enough, the day came. The day when Esther was summoned to appear before King Xerxes. No. You've got nothing to worry about, I told her. You are beautiful. You've always been. I do admit my beauty regime has worked wonders. No, you're fine. But when you go into the king's private bedroom chamber, I want you to bring only what I tell you. Nothing more, nothing less. I want you to bring this feather, this leather strap, oh yes, and this over-ripened mango. Trust me, it'll all make sense, okay? So you go in there, you have a good time, don't worry about anything. Yeah, that's when I worried about everything. I mean, I'd been getting closer to the king, and if he selected Esther as his queen, well then, it would be very good for my career. Had nothing to worry about. First thing in the morning, Xerxes comes bounding out of his chamber, puts his bare paw around me and says, "Hey, Hegai, that Esther of yours, she just burst in here and blah, 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 blah. However did she know?" So then Esther became Queen Esther, and then all hell broke loose. Because turns out she's part of some minority population. We're very inclusive here in the kingdom. But somehow there was an official in the court who didn't like her people and passed an edict to utterly destroy them. How did these things even get through? So being the eunuch, I had to go to the queen's quarters and talk to her. I went out of the palace to talk to some cousin or uncle of hers. I went to the king's people. I set up some lunches. We smoothed the whole thing over. Of course, some heads had to roll because that's how they solve problems around here. But the important thing is she is firmly in her place, he is firmly in his place, and I... Well, you see, behind every great monarchy, there is a Hegai. Sadly, though, not everyone finds their place. Sometimes it would be easier if you didn't know you were different, or if you could hide it. Sometimes being different creates difficulty. Jesus said, "Let the one who seeks not stop seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. When he becomes troubled, he will be astonished and rule over all." Trouble. Sometimes being different just brings trouble, especially with our families. Strange, but you think families would understand and accept best of all. Now, Joseph, he was different, and it created a lot of trouble with his brothers. They were so cruel to him, but they had no idea how it would end.
Yeah, I'm Esau. You probably know my brother Jacob, although he went and changed his name to Israel. We're twins, Jacob and me, although you never know it by looking at us. I mean, I'm a real man. I'm big, I'm hairy. I'm always out in the field doing real men's work, while my brother, Jacob, he's as smooth as a woman. He was very sensitive growing up. He liked to dwell amongst the tents, with the women. They're cooking, they're gossiping, they're scheming. He was a real girly boy. And since I was normal, well, our father, Isaac, well, he favored me. Now, don't get me wrong. Although my brother was a girly boy, he liked the women, okay? In fact, he had 2 wives and slept with both their handmaidens. And from those women, he had a pack of children, daughters, sons, strong, strapping young men, all of them. Yeah, except for one of his youngest, Joseph. This kid. He was trouble from the day he was born, always crying, clinging to his mother, and then he didn't want to go out to do real men's work. And then he started having these dreams, these crazy dreams he told everyone about. Listen, boys are not supposed to dream. So one day I pulled my brother aside. I said, "Listen, you gotta do something to this kid. Toughen him up. It's a rough world. They're just gonna ride right over him." But does he listen to me? No. He gives him everything he wants, including that robe. Oh, listen. I would want nothing to do with a robe like that. For one, too expensive for my taste. A royal garment, the kind of garment that a king would give to his virgin daughter. It was a princess dress. Yeah, my brother Jacob, he gave his son Joseph a princess dress, and that kid, he put that dress on. He flitted about the compound like he was some kind of butterfly. And I thought, this is not gonna end well. Sure enough, one day when the boys were out in the field doing real men's work, Jacob sent Joseph to go check on them. And that kid, no sense in his head, he puts on the stupid dress, goes traipsing across the countryside, making fools out of all of us. His brothers, they saw him in a distance. Who could miss him in that getup? And they said, enough of this dreamer. And they rushed him. They threw him to the ground. They beat him black and blue, trying to beat some sense into him. Then they ripped off the stupid dress, tore it to pieces, defiled it in blood, and came back with a bloody garment and a story about how their brother was attacked by a wild beast, and that's all that remained. But later they pulled me aside. They told me what really happened, how they sold their brother to some trader going off to Egypt, sold him as a slave. And I thought, well, maybe it's all for the best. I mean, I'm a shepherd. You know, when you got a weak lamb, you got to take it out. It's just going to bring the rest of them down. And besides, the kid might do okay for himself there in Egypt land, where they go in for the whole girly boy thing. Well, through the years, I didn't give him a second thought. I mean, who's got time to mourn? Then we had that drought, famine. You know, it comes in cycles. You just gotta be man enough to ride it out, but this time was different. It was like the earth was cursed against us year after year. It got so bad we finally sent the boys to Egypt to get some grain. Not to beg. We don't beg from no one. But they were brought before some high official in Pharaoh's court, and at first they couldn't tell what it was, a man or a woman with the headdress and the makeup, the flowing robes. Those Egyptians. Turns out, it was their very own brother, Joseph. Somehow that girly boy worked his way up through the ranks to become second in command of the whole kingdom, but they didn't recognize him under all that gunk. Now this was Joseph's chance to get back at his brothers, to get his revenge. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You don't let anyone ride over you. But does he? No. Not that girly boy. He goes off weeping like a woman, and then he comes back to try to teach his brothers a lesson. And then he forgives them, and he reconciles with them. He gives them food, he gives them shelter. He treats them like he's their sister or their mother, not like any man that I've ever seen. And in so doing, that girly boy, my nephew, Joseph, he saved us all.
Growing up in Jerusalem, we always went to the temple. I loved the temple with all of the courtyards and the fountains and people from all over the world. Now, when you come to our temple, on the one side, you'll see the men with their long beards and the young men trying to grow their beards, reading scripture, discussing politics, arguing. And on the other side are the women and the children, playing games, preparing food, discussing politics, arguing. And I remember when I was little, at the temple, I would sometimes see Desta. Desta was beautiful and handsome. Desta looked to me like a woman, but dressed as a man. Very dark, darker than us, from Africa, and rich, an official from a royal court. Desta often came to Jerusalem on business, and being devout would come to our temple. And I don't know why, but I always wanted to talk to Desta. And one day I said to my cousins, let's go introduce ourselves. And they said no. Our parents forbid it. That one is unclean. That one is deformed. That one is a eunuch. So I never spoke with Desta. But I saw Desta return year after year, always looking a little bit older and sadder and staying less and less time with us. But recently I heard good news that one of the apostles actually met Desta and spoke with Desta. It was Philip on the South Road going out of Jerusalem when who should come rumbling by in a magnificent chariot but Desta, hunched over, reading from a scroll of the prophet Isaiah. Philip, always very friendly, shouted up and said, "Friend, do you understand what you're reading?"
It seems I understand little, but if you know the scriptures, come, explain it to me. I've been puzzling over this passage, speaking of a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Tell me, does the prophet speak of himself or of someone else? For this passage sounds familiar to me. Like a sheep before the shearers is silent, like a lamb before the slaughter, he too opened not his mouth. In his humiliation, justice was denied him. Who can speak of his offspring? For his life was cut off. Tell me, does the prophet speak of himself or of someone else? For this story sounds familiar to me.
So Philip talked about Jesus and the time that we were together and how we let lots of people come near. Women, lepers. Jesus had nice things to say about eunuchs too. So they continued to read as they traveled until they came to a portion of Isaiah's prophecy that neither of them had ever seen before. Perhaps they don't read it in the assembly. But it was a promise from God to eunuchs. But reading it that day on a chariot, it seemed as if it were a promise for Desta.
Well, let us continue our reading then, shall we? Thus saith the Lord, let not the eunuch say, I am a dried up old tree with no future and no hope. For to those eunuchs who keep my command and honor my Sabbath, I will give you a memorial better than sons and daughters. I will write your name on the walls of my house, and you will never be cut off.
Well then, what is to stop me from being baptized? Oh, earlier in the journey, Philip explained that when we become disciples, we get baptized. It's a sign that we die to our old lives and we're more free to live as ourselves. Desta has since returned home to Ethiopia and has spread the good news, and there is surrounded by many brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. Oh, Desta always had lots of money. But now, Desta is rich. Jesus said, when you know yourselves, then you are truly known, and you understand that you are children of the living parent. But when you do not know yourselves, you live in poverty, and you are poverty. I once met someone who didn't quite fit. It was the time of the Passover. We didn't know where we would spend our Passover. Jesus often kept plans till the last minute. We began getting word from our families inviting us to celebrate with them. They added you could even bring your friends, although they smell funny. And it was the day before the Passover that Simon Peter persuaded me to ask Jesus, "Teacher, where will we have our Passover?" And Jesus said, "I want you, Thomas, and Philip to go down to the city and down to the well. There you will find a man carrying a pitcher of water. Follow that one and say to the master of the house that we have need of a place for our Passover. There you will find an upper room fully furnished. Go, make preparations there." Well, Simon Peter exploded. He said, "Teacher, this is outrageous. There are no empty rooms. We needed to make our plans weeks, months ago. And besides, you're sending them on a fool's errand to find a man carrying a pitcher of water. Everybody knows only women and children carry water. They're going to be walking around the city for days." Jesus said, "Go. You will find it, just as I tell you." Thomas, Philip, and me, we got up and we went down into the city. And we walked down towards the well, and sure enough, there in the distance, there was this man carrying a pitcher of water. Well, the story behind this one. Earlier, that same day, Levi had gathered all of his family in his father's house. His grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, cousins, all their small children. And when they had all settled, he turned to them and said, "Dear ones, we're about to begin our celebration of the Passover, our deliverance from bondage to new life. And I have something to confess, in that I've often felt as if I were a slave. It's not that you treated me badly, it's just that, well, you remember when I was little, I liked to play with my sisters and my girl cousins, and you said, 'Oh, it's just a phase, he'll grow out of it.' But I never did. I just grew secretive. And through the years, I realized that there must be something wrong with me, that somehow the inside of me doesn't match the outside. I mean, inside I always felt like a little girl growing up into a woman, but outside you've only ever known me as Levi. So I've turned to the Lord. I called upon the name of the Lord, God, who desires truth in the inward part. And God has given me peace. So as we begin our Passover celebrations, I choose to live my life outwardly, as it's always been inwardly, as female. And from now on, I would like you to call me Miriam." It was as if a demon had materialized. There was yelling and screaming, renting of garments and mourning, mothers taking their children out of the house. The father raged around, screaming, "You're ruining Passover. Look what you're doing to your mother." But Miriam stood still in the midst of the chaos. And then she saw it, the empty pitcher. She reached for it. Her father grabbed her hand and said, "Young man, what do you think you're doing?" "Father, I feel as if I'm a woman. I don't mind holding the pitcher." "Young man, please, don't go out with that pitcher. Think of your mother. If you go out with that, no good would come of it." "Father, you know I've always honored you and Mother. Come good or evil, I don't know, but one thing I do know, I must obey God." So for the first time since she was little, Miriam stepped outside, carrying the pitcher. The neighbors looked on in shock and horror that somebody from such a good family would be doing something so outrageous. She came to the well, and the women there saw her and laughed and moved aside. And there at that well, she took the clay jar and she plunged it into the cool, cool waters, and then placed it onto her strong, strong shoulders and turned to go home. And it was at that moment that we saw this one that looked like a man carrying a pitcher of water. We ran up to that person and said, "So, is it true that you have an empty room where we can have our Passover?"
Oh, thanks to me, all the rooms are now empty.
So then I said, "Well, would you like me to carry that for you? You must feel very embarrassed holding it."
No, it feels quite comfortable. Normal.
You see, I am Miriam. Miriam. She's become a very good friend of mine. Sadly, much of her family wants nothing to do with her. So, like many outsiders, she's found new family. It was at that Passover, what turned out to be our last meal altogether, that Jesus told us he was going away, how he wouldn't be back for a very long time, and that we must continue the work that he started. So there at the table, we asked him, "When will we see you? And when will you appear before us?" Jesus said, "When you take off your clothes without being ashamed." Well, I've always been ashamed. I've always been unsure. But I've begun to figure myself out. There is this one time, Thomas and me, we were sitting laughing about something, I don't even remember what, when suddenly Simon Peter grabbed me. He dragged me before Jesus, and Simon Peter said, "Make Mary leave us, for females are not worthy of life." Jesus rebuked him and said, "Simon Peter, you are wrong. Females are very much worthy of life. That's why I've selected women to be disciples and apostles. You have so much to learn from these women." Then Jesus helped me up and held me close and said, "But Mary, here is a different story altogether." And Jesus said, "Look, I shall take Mary and make her male, so that she too will be a living spirit." For much of my life, I felt as if I were a dying spirit, always living out other people's expectations, playing the parts, putting on masks. I didn't know myself. I lived in poverty. I was poverty. But Jesus said, "Look, I shall take Mary and make her male, so that she too will be a living spirit." So, I'm on this journey to see Thomas and the Hydras. I know, it's a long journey. There are many dangers, risks. I may not even make it to the end. But Jesus said, "Look, I shall take Mary and make her male, and she too will be a living spirit. I'm sorry. I never properly introduced myself. I was once Mary, but now I am Marcus.